Everyone loves a good statistic, whether it's how many goals a player has scored, how far an athlete has ever run, or how many headshots our favourite player pulled off in their last deathmatch. I mean, okay, that last one is probably just an esports thing, but the point still stands. There's nothing sweeter than arguing over who the better player is, only to pluck a sick stat out of the air and dunk on your friends with your superior knowledge and opinion. But some stats are easier to understand than others, and fledgling esports juggernaut Valorant has potentially the most useful stats in the history of FPS gaming. So if you've been staring at the screen throughout the VALORANT Champions Tour, desperately wondering what ACS is, and why the player who got an ace has a higher one than the player who got a clutch, then look no further, we can help you out. Average combat score. We'll start simple, that's what ACS stands for. And on the surface, it provides a simple and instant snapshot of how well a player is performing compared to their teammates and their enemies. If you find yourself with the highest ACS on your team, then congrats to you, my friend. You can objectively say you're the best player on your side. Well done, you. But here's the thing, it's not just about pointing your gun and doing the shooty thing until you win. Average combat score isn't just about getting kills. And as is often the case, things get really interesting when you add mathematics to the equation. Your number of frags is obviously important, but the level of damage you dole out, the number of assists you score, any utility you do that causes secondary damage, non-damaging support like using flashes to blind enemies, the number of rounds you bag the dub in, it all adds up to the be-all and end-all of your average combat score. ACS also takes into account the kinds of in-game plays that only the best can pull off, including first bloods, and obviously multi-kills and streaks. So in theory, you'll be rewarded if you play smart and manage to get the drop on your opponents with a clever angle or flank that they don't see coming. In general, you'll be looking at 1 point for each point of damage you deal, with multi-kills and how well you support your team, adding a whole variety of multipliers and buffs to your overall score. It's why you might find yourself below your best mate in average combat score, even though you absolutely got more kills than them. Chances are they got more streaks, more first bloods, and more utility off than you did. It's all about the impact on the outcome of the game, not just who got the most kills. So while it probably should have a different name, like say, average impact score, call me right, the fact is it's an invaluable tool for measuring player performance across a whole range of metrics without having to sift through hours and hours of VODs. Great for fans, great for players, and great for coaches. So now you know what it does and why it's vital for analysis, let's talk about the best thing about statistics: the records. Now, while the game continues to grow and more championships are played, these stats will undoubtedly be bested one day, but as it stands, the ACS King is exactly who you'd expect. Much like death and taxes, TenZ holding a Valorant record is pretty much inevitable at this point. The Canadian superstar holds the current record for the highest average combat score at a Valorant Masters event after he snagged an outstanding 468 ACS against Korean side F4Q in Berlin, giving his whole team the day off and finishing the match with a sensational 32 kills, 7 deaths, and 1 assist. But that's not even close to the highest average combat score in official games. Far from it, actually. Average combat scores of upwards of 600 have been recorded on those rare occasions where pro players put in performances of truly legendary proportions. And while yes, you can argue that the ACSs are inflated with high-level players going up against inferior opposition, you can only beat what's in front of you, making the likes of footballist player Sturban's 602 ACS, going 32 kills for 1 death in a 13-0 clean sweep, and Musera's outrageous 640 average combat score, truly outstanding outliers in a field packed with hard carry potential. At the opposite end of the spectrum, obviously we all have off days. Shout out to Crazy Raccoons player Fisker, so often the saviour and serial carrier of his side, who managed to pull a 51 ACS on map 2 of their match against eventual Masters Berlin champions Gambit esports on the first day of the tournament. That's the lowest ACS recorded at any Valorant LAN event before or since. Now, it's important to note that no matter how much we love them, stats aren't without their critics. and they don't always tell the whole story quite as well as we'd like them to. One of the biggest criticisms squared at Valorant as a whole is that its statistical analysis massively favours duelists, since the more you frag, the higher ACS you will be able to bag. If you're playing defensively, or you're a support who would rather assist than get blood on your hands, the true tale of your impact on the game will never really be told, or be obvious enough for you to lord it over your teammates. This was more true back at Valorant's launch, when non-damaging support play wasn't included in the calcs, but they are now. So blinding or smoking an enemy is just as vital to bagging a decent ACS as an assist. And at least now, when your Sage reses a teammate and they ace the whole enemy squad, the Sage will get a little credit for their work. On an ideal future Earth, average combat score would also include plants and diffuses, since certain agents are way more capable of getting the spike down efficiently or dealing with a quick diffuse than others, and are clearly built with that purpose in mind. But like we said, stats ain't perfect. So just how important is ACS? For casual players, it's a clear way to prove that you, not your teammates, are the superior carry in your 5-stack. For the professionals though, ACS is a vital statistic in analysing pre- and post-match play. It gives insight into players' styles and preferred maps. If the other team's best fragger has a higher ACS on Icebox than Ascent, that's a potential avenue for a tactical advantage. If TenZ ever goes off the boil, unlikely, we know, and starts scoring below average on his ACS, then Sentinels, or any team really, can identify weaknesses and problems quickly and work to fix them. Average combat score might be a bit of a misnomer, but it's an all-encompassing soup of a stat that embodies everything that makes a great Valorant player. And the more the stat is developed to incorporate the more unsung roles in this ever-growing FPS juggernaut, like the controllers and Sentinels of this world, the better a measure it will be when comparing the true greats of this up-and-coming esport.